Vidyati ma'am, shall we start?
Yes, yeah, sir. We currently have about 20 of the participants. So, yeah, welcome everyone to this session on demystifying manufacturing concepts. I'm sure the content is going to be very enriching for all of us because our trainer has put in considerable amount of effort in getting the content in place. So, thank you, Yasser, firstly for taking this time out to do this session. I now hand it over to you to take us through the concepts.
Thank you for the opportunity, madam, and thanks everyone for joining. So, as you might have seen Vidyati ma'am's teaser yesterday, today we'll be covering some topics like how capacity is planned for a product group, then how the lead time is calculated, and what is the difference between lead time, takt time, cycle time, throughput time. So, all these weird terms, and we'll see everything in the context of valve industry. So, you might have already heard about all of these things in general about in manufacturing in general, but today we'll see everything customized to a valve background. So the first topic is the capacity. Here, just for our understanding, I have depicted a sample product, the different processes you can see on the left. It is, for example, a gate valve may have seat lapping, disc grinding, assembly, and testing. And also, we have taken different ranges. So there is 2 inch to 4 inch, 6 inch to 8 inch, 10 inch to 14 inch, and so on. That's because there will be a different set of machineries available for each cell. So this is one of the concepts you might have studied when you were in college or when you were attending some training. It's called cellular manufacturing. So in cellular manufacturing, what happens is instead of having a very big common line, we have different cells with different set of manpower, different set of machineries, and each of them have their own target of production. So in this our own valve industry, we have segregated for different sizes. Now we'll see how the capacity has been arrived for each of the size. So the first case, there is a 2 inch to 4 inch with different times. You can see that everything is in minutes here. So seat lapping takes 31 minutes, then disc grinding takes 25 minutes, and so on. And what happens is when there are multiple machines available for that particular activity, then the particular group of machineries are giving an output of one valve every 16 minutes. So this is the cell cycle time. Since there are two machines and each of the machine is having 31 minutes, if you stagger it in such a way that one machine will start the operation and after 15 minutes the next machine will start the operation, then what will happen is every 16 minutes there will be one valve coming out of the line. So now I'll throw a question open to you. Now, given that there is a cell cycle time of 16 minutes for seat lapping and 13 minutes for disc grinding and so on, what do you think would be the output of the cell? So, any guesses how this number has 25 has come up here? How is the particular 2 inch to 4 inch cell having a shift capacity of 25? Can unmute or you can put your answer in the chat box. Any guesses, anyone? Why, how we have come up with the 25 number for the shift capacity? All right, looks like this is a tough question, so I'll answer this one. So you can see that in the three processes, the seat lapping operation takes more time. So since the cell cycle time is more for the seat lapping, that becomes the bottleneck. And the bottleneck operation will decide the shift capacity. So we can see here that a particular shift is having 391 minutes. So if you divide 391 minutes by 16, then you should be able to find out that the cell is able to produce 25 valves in a shift. Now, going from shift capacity to monthly capacity, can anyone guess how this 1753 numbers of quantities coming for 2 to 4 inch cell? Anyone, any guesses? Any idea how this monthly capacity of 1753 would come out from the 25 numbers of shift capacity?
We will be multiplying it with the number of days in a month where this um, capacity is taking place.
That's a one very good way. So if you multiply, there are 25 working days, then you can multiply 25 by 25. And since this is on 3 shift basis, again, you need to multiply by 3. That would be the usual way how you would go about it. But there is a catch here. For example, if you notice this table, the third shift is having a different time. So in effect, here when you calculated 25 numbers, you considered 391 minutes. But unfortunately, the third shift is 340 minutes. So ideally, there's a different way to calculate. You can add the available time of all the 3 shifts. So it's coming to 1122 minutes. Then what you have to do is divide 1122 by 16. So then you will get how many quantity can be made in a day. That quantity you have to multiply by 25. So that way you will be able to find a more accurate number. So that was the catch there. Now, anybody has any queries here? Yeah, thank you, Abhishek. I saw your answer now. So you are also right. You have to multiply by number of days. So from this table, you'll be able to take out a lot of insight. So if you are from sales, if you are from project management, then this should be new to you, but you'll be able to find something really insightful from this table. Yeah, Harsh, you wanted to know more about the bottleneck. So here you can see there are various processes. So you can see that seat lapping takes 31 minutes, the assembly takes 33 minutes, and so on. But uh, you can see even though this has 33 minutes, there are 4 assembly stations in that place. Since there are 4 assembly stations, you can divide this 33 by 4. Now this assembly station can either be one valve being made fully in each station, or it can be like in each of the station 25% of the valve is being made. So when each of the station 25% of the valve is being made, then what happens is instead of one valve coming out every 33 minutes from the cell, what happens is get divided by 4 and you'll get every 8 minutes you'll get a valve out. But this 8 minutes is much faster, so this won't be a bottleneck. Then test stand also, there are 4 test stands. So when you divide 40 minutes by 4, this will also not be a bottleneck. So these two are kind of the bottleneck, and in these two, the seat lapping is taking much more time. So what will happen is seat lapping becomes the constraint in the whole line. After some time, I'll show an value stream map. In that, it should become even more clear. So I'll share some insights what you can infer from this. One could be that since the particular line is having more less of a cycle time in assembly, probably if some other line is having a higher assembly time, then they can probably shift some of their load to this line. For example, in TMBV, they don't have seat lapping and disk grinding. They have only assembly and testing, and usually assembly will become a bottleneck. So probably they can take their help from taking this product group, which is having lesser assembly time, and that's how they do it in the shop floor actually. So that could be one insight. Anybody is able to infer anything else from the information given here? Another thing you will notice that the capacity is not same for all the cells. So a 2 to 4 inch cell will have more quantity of production. A 6 to 8 inch cell is having lesser number, and 10 inch to 14 inch is having even lesser number. So accordingly, the output from each of the cell is different. And when we are getting orders, we have to take this into account that you might be getting like 100 numbers each in each of the size ranges, or say you might get 200 numbers each. So the 200 numbers each, the first two cells will be able to deliver in 1 month. But in the third case, this cell is having only 129 capacity. So in that case, the shipments will get split into 2 months. So that's one insight, that the capacity does not remain same for all the sizes. Then any other questions you're having regarding this slide? So if I were you, I would ask some questions like, why don't we add one more seat lapping machine and bring this cycle time as well? But what will happen is when you add this machine, then the cycle time of this disk grinding will become more. Then this will become the bottleneck. So at one point of time, you have to do a trade-off that you may not want to do more investment, and you have to manage with whatever bottleneck is there in place. The only thing you can do is you can do some minor improvements within these two machines, so that instead of bringing it down drastically, if you make it 3 machines, then it will become 10 minutes. Instead of bringing it down so drastically, within the existing two machines, you can do some small improvements so that from 16 it can at least become 14 or 13. So that's why kaizens are so important. If by doing little bit improvement, if we are able to bring this down to 14 or 13 minutes, then it saves us the cost of investing in one whole additional machine, which may cost like 10 to 20 lakhs. Yeah, Abhishek, you got the point very right, that it depends on when adding a machine will be cost effective. Yeah, anyone want to speak? Someone has unmuted any questions? Oh, I'm not able to see the chat. If anybody can mute the person, we have.
Yeah, sir, how is the line capacity calculated?
Yeah, what happens is uh, we are considering here, just for the sake of it, if all the cells were one, like if the concept of different cells is not there, if somebody generally asks us what is the capacity of this product group, we are not going to go into detail and tell him that 2 to 4 inches this much, 6 to 8 inches this much, and so on. We'll combine all the three values and tell that the capacity of this product group is 2341 valves. So that's how the line capacity came in. So another very queer thing you'll notice here is that this capacity is 2341, whereas the testing capacity is 4274. Can anyone can guess why the testing capacity is so high? Anybody, any thoughts? Why is the cell capacity for the testing so high? So if everyone, because we have third-party inspection, that's why we always keep the testing capacity. Suguma, say you wanted to say anything?
No, sorry. Proceed. You go, carry on.
All right. So one of the reasons was that the testing requires third-party inspection, and so you're already testing 100% of the valves. So you'll need this 2341 capacity fully. Additionally, if since most of these valves are made in-house, we also have third-party inspection for, again, which we have to inspect the same valve in front of a third-party inspector. So to do that, we need to have 50% to 100% extra capacity, because sometimes there are times when 100% of the orders, like 100% of the valves, require third-party inspection. Yeah, Reshmi, you have any question?
No, nothing as such till now.
Okay. Then can anyone guess, apart from like you can see that some time is gone in lunchtime, tea time, and all, and then there is efficiency issue. Because a human being is making the valve, he'll not work like a robot 100% of his time. So he may take a washroom break or something. So the efficiency goes down to 85% and available time is going down. Apart from this, can anyone guess what other thing can impact and reduce the available capacity?
So, Yasir, keeping the material ready for assembly, like
Yeah, you are right. There can be some waiting time, inventory in between. That could be one reason. Any other reason why the capacity could be down?
The required tools may not be available
Yeah,
during the assembly.
yeah, waiting for tools and fixtures. All the materials will be ready, but the tool will not be ready. So the machining may not happen or something.
Any rework and rejections?
Yeah, that's most likely. So we are assuming 2341 is capacity. Then the valve, when you test in the end, you find that leakage is there. Then you disassemble the valve and you send it back to the line. So that eats up a little bit of the capacity. So that's a very good point. The first time pass will reduce the capacity. All right. So I got a lot of good points. I'll go on to the next slide and give you some more factors that could affect the capacity. One example is the public holidays. So public holidays is not in our hand. So and legally you are obliged to give the day off and not do any production. Then another thing that happens is once the holiday gets over, the people don't come back on time. So this data is given by HR. So for example, after Ayudha Puja or Pongal or Diwali, we don't get the people full strength next day. There's only around 40% of the strength. So that also reduces the capacity by a bit. Then what happens is uh, you can see that the number of Sundays are not same every month. Some months are having more Sundays, some months are having lesser Sundays. So effectively what happens is you may think that the capacity is same every month, but in reality it varies a lot. You can see it can go as high as 26 or 27 per month, or it can be as low as 18.4 or 21.8 or 23.4. So this is like a point of caution for the sales team and project management team. So whenever you see that a customer wants a delivery on January, then you should think that this point should come across your mind that January is already having very less working days. So it may further reduce the like your capacity, and because of which the valve may not get made on that month as you would have expected. So here some more factors which affect capacity. One, as I told, was manpower. So you'll expect more manpower, but lesser manpower will come. So even though if it was two shift, the capacity if all the machineries were running, then it should have been 3,629. But because the only one third of the manpower came, and since the manpower was less, instead of running two shift, only one shift came. So this capacity got reduced by, firstly, it became one third because of lack of manpower. And since one shift did not run, it again became halved. So only 843 valves could be made because of the available manpower and available shifts. And you can see the actual valve produced that month was 844. So theoretically, the capacity is only 24% against the whole available capacity. But practically, because of the other constraints, the capacity was actually utilized 100%. So this is another way to look at things. And this is for two shift capacity, and the same if we deploy manpower for another shift, then the capacity increases again by another one third, and this would be the numbers. Anyone has any questions here?
Yes, sir, Rashmi here.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the figures of January, February, March. I think this is 2021,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, right.
Now,
It's
tell me,
2020.
yeah. Now, I'm just looking at the March. You have 27 holidays, number of working days 27. The capacity is increasing in March.
Yeah.
6124.
Yeah.
Okay. Then the same thing if we look at December also. If I compare the December to March, there's a hardly 1 day gap. Then how are we going to have such a drastic increase in March?
It's not drastic. It's just 100. You can see it's 3931 and it has increased to
Mm.
4082. Hardly.
Yeah, but the output is 6124 and 5897. So, like, what is the factor that is
It's one
increasing
third.
the capacity?
Factor is one third. From this one to this one, the factor is one third more because you're running one more shift. So here, if it is 200, then here the increase is 300 because it is one third more.
So, because the capacity condition 3 shift you have written over here. So,
Yeah.
it is 4173 to 6124. And then
No, this
4944 to
falls.
6124.
You can see that is actually January. January has only 18.4 working days. So it's a very drastic increase. Since 18.4 working days and 27 working days, you can see there's a huge gap. Got it right. But when you compare December to March, it is not so much. Because it's 26 and 27. Got it right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's all from this side. If anybody doesn't have any other questions, I can move on. All right, going ahead. So now we'll look at another how to calculate lead times. So far we have been looking at capacity. So in this particular process, you can see that testing is the bottleneck. So testing process becomes a deciding factor for the capacity. Now, suppose there was a backlog of 12,000 number valves, then given the monthly capacity is only 1,000, then it will take around 12 months to liquidate the existing backlog. So if you get a new order for another 1,000 valves, then the only after this 12 months is liquidated, then in the 13th month that valve can be taken for production. And in that 13th month when it starts, it itself will have 2 months of process lead time. So it will have like, it will take 1 month for machining and 1 month for assembly, testing, offering, painting. So when you combine that two things, the process lead time could be 2 months. Effectively, if you book an order right now when there is already 12,000 numbers of valves in backlog for that product and the bottleneck is 1,000 numbers, then it'll take 14 months to deliver the valve. So this is just a very quick way to calculate lead time. And in case you get some kind of a bonus order or urgent order where the bonus clause says that you have to deliver valves within 3 months, then all you have to do is you have to jump the queue. Instead of waiting for the 12,000 numbers to get over, you have to insert the order in between after probably 1,000 valves itself, so that in that 1 month the material can be procured, and in the next 2 months the valve can be the machining and the other processes can be done, and within 3 months you'll be able to deliver. So that's how you jump the queue and you execute bonus orders. Now, what do you think, whether we could see that we could reduce the queue lead time? Can we also reduce this process lead time? Anybody, any thoughts? Can we reduce the process lead time? You can just put a yes or no in the chat box. If you think it can be reduced, yes, or if you think that cannot be reduced, no. I'm getting a lot of yeses. Yeah, that's very nice. I think all of you have got it right. We can reduce it. And Abhishek, I didn't get your point of increasing testing capacity. Oh yeah, if we increase the testing capacity, probably it may help, but you have to see there might be other bottlenecks also. In case there is offering also there, then you have to also uh, add the capacity for offering in case that valves require offering. Yeah, Praveen sir has told first time pass, that's the right idea. So one important point to note is that we are only worried about machining to painting. That's because these processes are there in-house. And even the Lakshmana sir has told to add vendors for machining. That's the right thought, because assembly we cannot unfortunately outsource. One reason is because the drawings are confidential and patent. If you give a component for machining to one vendor, he'll never figure out how to make the whole valve. But if you give the GAD drawing and you give the components to some vendor, then he'll figure out how to make the valve unless you have an NDA with him or something. Another constraint is that we do assembly testing and all for really big valves. So already the smaller and simpler valves we have done through CMG route, but this valves which we make in-house, they require like a very solid building which can have EOT cranes which can lift 20-ton load and so on. And these facilities are very expensive. If any other supplier is having this facility, then he himself is a valve manufacturer. That's why he'll be able to afford such kind of material handling equipment. So now we'll see the how else we can reduce the process lead time. So one way we have some of you have given really good inputs. Another way could be, I'll just open one document now, which will give a better clarity. So what you see on screen right now is called a value stream map. In the value stream map, we cover everything from once the customer order comes in till all the processes get completed and it gets dispatched, what are the processes involved, and how much time it takes. So there is something called a throughput time. Throughput time basically means once the raw material is available till dispatch, how much time it takes. Then there is something else called lead time. Lead time is basically from the point we get the customer order till we deliver the valve to him. So the whole cycle is the lead time. Now throughput time, it includes processing time, inspection time, move time, and queue time. So as Kumar had told, reduction in material handling was one of the correct items. And Tangapandi sir is coming to the right point, single piece flow. Abhishek has asked whether throughput time is the same as the summation of cycle time. That is actually not correct. So throughput time has four major components. One of the components is cycle time. Another component is inspection time. Here you can see that once the casting is received, some 365 components or 105 components are under inspection. So that is basically the inspection time. Then the next component is the material handling or movement time. So when this particular casting is moved from the stores to the assembly area, that has an amount of time involved. Anyone has anything to say? Muruganandam sir. Yeah, okay. So another thing is the moving time. The third one is the inventory. One you can see apart from the moving, there is also queue time. So it can be inventory time or queue time, or between two processes, you can see that there are some items already waiting. So what happens is, suppose this process of welding gets completed, it cannot go to phosphating until all the 50 components in between has gone to the next phosphating stage. So that's the queue time. And I wanted to highlight that one of the biggest time wastage is actually this queue time. You can imagine how much moving from store to this assembly shop may take like two to 3 minutes. But you can see that this phosphating has a process time of 30 minutes. And to clear this inventory of 50 valves, suppose there is no batching, like 4 components together are not phosphated. If each item is phosphated separately, then 15 to 30. So 1500 minutes, the queue time will be there, and only then the item will go to the next stage. So you might have seen that we have expediters in a shop floor from customers and all. So that is actually the biggest role the expediter plays. He comes in between and he tells the phosphating guy to please take his valve as soon as the body welding is completed, and he jumps the queue. So we saw the concept of jumping the queue in the presentation for the existing backlog where the process has not even started, but the same thing can also be done in between the processes. So that's how the urgent orders and all get executed so quickly. It needs some dedicated person to go along with the component and ensure that every time it is jumping the queue and it is taken on priority. So Abhishek was asking, isn't it calculated from caching received itself? So you're right. The throughput time will start once the raw material is available. Yeah, so throughput time equals cycle time plus waiting time. Waiting time includes inspection is actually not waiting time because actually some activity is happening at that time. So you need not categorize it under the waiting time. You can move it separately. Also, moving time also is not something which comes under waiting. That's happening apart from waiting. So it's going from one step to another step. So that will also not be under waiting. But inventory time and queue time is under waiting. So I'm just answering to your chat question. So Tangapandi, Mr. Tangapandi is telling to reduce the waiting time for inspections. So yeah, here also there could be potential, like since it's 365 components have to be inspected. If a new casting comes in, that new casting cannot be inspected unless the existing queue of 365 is cleared. So that's also a very good point. Even the waiting time for inspection should be reduced. Then so far we have discussed the broader categories, but there are some other ways also to reduce the lead time. For example, if you take this process, you can see that changeover time is 45 minutes. So suppose one component, the cycle time is 30 minutes, it takes 30 minutes to do the weld leak test, then the next component cannot be immediately taken up for doing the weld leak test. It has some kind of separate fixtures and the water inlet, outlet, everything needs to be fixed. So it takes some time to set up the next component and it takes 45 minutes. So even if you reduce this changeover time, that will also help reduce the lead time. So one concept that is very useful here is single minute exchange of dies. So if the fixtures takes just within 1 minute, it can get changed to the next component, or even lesser is better. So that concept is called single minute exchange of die. We'll see one example as we go through the presentation. So another thing we saw was changeover time reduction. Then as Praveen sir had told initially, the percentage uptime or the first pass yield. So FPY, once the weld leak test is done, you will find out that weld is not perfect, it is leaking. So again, it will go to the previous stage. Again, the welding will be done. Again, it will come for testing. So that testing happens 2-3 times. So if that first pass yield is improved, then again, it will help a lot. Then the final thing is uptime. So breakdown happens. When breakdown happens, the lead time unnecessary increases for doing the maintenance and repair. So if we have some very good things like preventive maintenance happening on time, then that item will also reduce. So these are various ways lead time can be improved from material perspective. There is another perspective of communication. So you can see the information flow arrow marks all over the place. So in a very good system, the person, once he's done, he'll tell the previous person, he'll put pressure on him to give him the component. That is called pull system. So you can see here the communication is going backwards. That is the perfect way for communicating. But when the problem arises, yeah, Abhishek, you're right, pull system. So when the other way happens, what happens is this guy will not care, the welding guy. He'll keep, as soon as he's done with welding, he'll just push it on to the phosphating guy. That's what creates a pileup of inventory. So ideally, you should follow pull system to reduce the lead time as much as possible, and that will eliminate the inventory. I'm just going down. You can see the impact of the inventory. This the wherever you see the top line, it indicates how much time it is waiting, how much time it is waiting. So this 50 components is waiting for, it is increasing the lead time by 1.15 days. But you can see the previous process is only 44 minutes. The next process is only 30 minutes. So much of bottleneck is getting accumulated in just because of piling up of inventory in between. So to overcome this, we need to implement single piece flow as Mr. Tangapandi had told. We'll go through the slide later on. I'm reading Abhishek's message. So cycle time of subsequent process should be less than that. It should not be less. It should ideally be same. So when the cycle time is same, then it will have a when the cycle time is same, then there will be no inventory in between. So Harsh's question was, why is inventory called a liability? Is it an asset or liability? Technically, as inventory is an asset because you are having material to make product. If you don't have a inventory, then you don't have asset to make the component. The issue is that when you have too much of inventory, your cash flow gets stuck. All your money has been put into inventory, and unless you make it into a valve, you won't get the cash from the customer. So the inventory is actually an asset, but when the inventory is too much and it is being held for too long, then it becomes a problem because you are not getting cash. So Abhishek had another question. Ideally, it will be difficult to match cycle time of each process. Yeah, you're right. That's where the Hyjunga and load leveling and all these concepts come in, where people see the takt time, what is the required customer demand. So customer demand, I'll just show a very brief calculation. Now we know the available time per shift. If it is 450 minutes, and every month as per CDD, suppose we are supposed to deliver 450 valves this month, then what you have to do is you have to see the available time in the month. So 450 minutes into 26, you have 11,700 minutes, and divided by the 450 valves requirement per month. That means every 26 minutes a valve should come out. That means every cycle time in every stage should be less than 26 minutes. Only then it will be able to meet the demand. So in this particular case, suppose this body PRV has 90 minutes. To go down to the level of 26 minutes, you will need 3 stations. So here right now 1 station is there. You will need 3 stations to carry out the process. This will happen only when every valve requires body pressure relief valve drilling. But fortunately, this doesn't come in every valve. That's why they have not added more stations. So that is how the takt time is calculated. It can even be calculated on a day basis, but the value, the end takt time will be 26 minutes only. So if you require 450 valves in a month, then divided by 25, you will get per time. And then what you have to do is you have to divide 450 minutes by per day valve. Again, the value will be 26 minutes. Yeah, Abhishek, you're right. Ideally, we'll need 4 stations here to meet the takt time. So I think this is just one sample data of one of our products. You can see that the value added time, the actual cycle time is only 10 hours for the valve, but the non-value added time is 163 minutes, 163 hours. So the actual value added time is only 5.5%. Remaining all 94.5% is non-value added time. And this is where we have our OPEX team, Muruganandam sir and all, who will help and ensure that we have a smoothly flowing process. So so Harsh is asking what is this non-value added time. I'll just go back to the Excel sheet. So that 163 hours comes from all this inventory. One of the biggest contributor is the inventory time. So inventory at each station is the non-value added time because the component is simply waiting between the processes. Other non-value added time is the changeover time, then the contribution of first pass yield, where the valve again goes through the same cycle, then the downtime. So all this contribute to the non-value added time, and that is how this 163 hours is coming. So I'll go back to the presentation. So we have seen a lot of ways to reduce the process lead time. So even by attacking that process lead time, we could see that we can reduce the time from 163 or 172 hours to just 10 hours. So even improving the process time quite a lot helps us in improving the delivery time. Now, next one is deciding on how to decide on the optimal delivery date. The customer may propose some delivery date, but in fact, there might be times when the customer delivery date, what asked by customer, may not be possible, but a month before that can be possible. So such kind of a situation is also possible. Uh, in the first example, we already have a significant backlog, and we have only around one third or one fourth of the capacity. So it will take roughly 3-4 months to liquidate, because apart from the backlog, we also have certain obligations, certain customer delivery date on each of the month. So considering all that month and what was overdue, it will take around 4 months to liquidate what is the backlog. So in the here I have separate, in this particular case, my definition of backlog is only what is overdue. Apart from overdue, we also have due of each month. So in L&T Valves lingo, we have to add both overdue as well as due for arriving at the backlog. But technically, in manufacturing terms, backlog actually means only what is overdue, and what is due is separate. In the second case, can anyone tell me that one particular month is not a good month to take order? Which month is that? You can type in the chat box which month for 14-inch to 20-inch is not a good month to get the CDD. Let me see who gets this. Yeah, Abhishek got it. It's June month, because we already have 300 valves due in that month. So ideally, what we should do is, if customer tells us that he wants a CDD of June, then we should tell him that we already have a lot of commitments in that month. Are you okay with delivery of May? Because in May we don't have so much CDD. Alternately, the sales guy can talk with the production guy and tell him whether he can prepone certain deliveries, and check with the project manager if any customer is willing to take the June delivery was in May instead of June. If the existing customer agrees, then the new customer who wants it in June only, then the delivery date can be in June. So anyone has any questions about this? Then in the third case, the situation is very relaxed. Every month we have capacity more than the due. So there is no issue at all. You can accept customer delivery date for any month. So you can see within a single product group, depending on the size, the delivery can vary a lot. So any questions anyone has here? All right, I'll go ahead. Now we have come to a reverse situation. In first slide, what we saw was given the machine's availability, how much valves we can make in a month. But there are times when we get like a very huge bulk order where we have to make some 5,000 valves. In that situation, it will be the other way around. So for 5,000 valves to be made in a month, how many machines are required, we need to calculate. So this is how that calculation is done. First, most important thing is to know the takt time. So based on the customer demand here, for example, 3,630 is forecasted. Then you have to divide available time, only you want to run 2 shifts. Sometimes even though 3 shift is possible, people may go for only 2 shifts. Can anyone guess why they are going for only 2 shifts? Okay, you can answer this point later also. I'll again ask this question after you have more clarity. So available time per day is 782 minutes. Then you divide 3630 by 300 days. So if 300 working days are there, then that will give you the takt time. And you know the cycle time for each process. So sheet lapping takes 31 minutes, disc grinding takes 25 minutes, and so on. So then you divide 31 by takt time, you will find out that you need 6 machines. But for that 6 machines, you will notice that you only have 2 machines available at present. So then you will realize that you need 4 additional machines to meet the demand of this customer. So now again, I'll throw that question. Suppose they had made it 3 shifts, then the available time would have increased, and then the number of machines requirement would have gone down. But why didn't we go in this situation for 3 missions, and instead we decided to go with 2 shifts but procurement of extra missions? Any guesses, anyone? Okay, I don't see a lot of answers for this one, so let me try answering this. One reason could be that it's a trade-off between capex and opex. Suppose this additional requirement is only for 1 year, then buying that extra machine would go to waste because probably after 2 years you won't have that much demand. So it would you once you buy that capex, the return on investment will not be as expected because the load will not be there after 2-3 years. That could be one reason. Another reason is that probably the operational expense is much more prohibitive. For example, the if we were in a European country or somewhere, the contract labor would be much more expensive to hire than as compared to getting a new mission. So in that situation, they'll go for more missions instead of adding one more shift and having more labor. So this is some example. These are 2 examples why they would have gone for more missions instead of adding one more shift. Does anyone have any question here? Harsh and Abhishek are telling that efficiency is low in the third shift or the time is lesser. That need not be the case. You can always bake it in such a way that all the 3 shifts are having approximately the same time, or you could alternately, what you can do is you can stagger the shifts in such a way that the shift doesn't fall in night time and it comes from middle of the evening to middle of the night. So all that is possible. So that could not be one of the reasons that third shift is not agreed. Third shift is not preferred. So if there are no other questions, I'll move on. Now we'll have a short quiz. This is going to be very fun. So I'll request all of you to go to kahoot.it. You can join from your phone or you can join from your, if your laptop is connected to the internet, then you can go from laptop, but phone is much more easier and fun. So I request all of you to go to kahoot.it. So please go to kahoot.it and put this PIN number. So we have 56 participants. I'd like to see as many people join in as possible. So 2 people have joined so far. Come on, guys. This is the mid-session quiz, so we'll have another one at the end. Wait for one more minute. $3:53 I started. Okay, starting. Guys, fast. Only 4 seconds left. Click something. Quick, quick, quick. Okay. The correct answer was time available by customer demand. So uh, you might have seen the image what was shown. There was different cycle times in bar chart, and one of the lines was the takt time. So that was basically the line balancing. So you can see that operation 1 takes 15 minutes, operation 2 takes 20 minutes, but takt time is around 12.8 minutes or something. So the already operation 3 is below takt time. So the aim should be to reduce the takt time of operation 1, 2, and 4. So what will happen is either if it is only little bit, you can do some minor improvement and come below takt time. But if the gap is huge, then you probably need to invest and add one more machine. So that's what is takt time and cycle time comparison. Now get ready for the next question. So only 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we got more answers this time. So 3 of you got wrong, that's fine. But as we saw, lead time is not something firm. We can easily reduce, either jump the queue, or you can reduce the cycle time, or you can reduce the inventory waiting in between processes. So there are a lot of ways to reduce the lead time. So required machines as per demand is 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. As I had shown you in the last, instead of going by available machines and seeing how many valves you can make, you can conversely see, given the available machines, how much given the capacity, given the demand of how many valves are to be made, you can calculate how many machines are required by dividing cycle time by takt time. Okay, now double points. You have 20 seconds for this, so you can nicely calculate and enter your answer. Okay, so most of you got it right. So if the backlog is already 100 valves, so backlog is 500, so capacity is 100, it'll take 5 months to just liquidate the backlog. Then the process time is 1 month for the process will start only in the 5th month, and by the end of 6th month, it will get over for a new valve which is coming in. So I'll go on. So is it a grade? This is a figure given to you. Is it a good idea to book order in June? Nice. This time we got all the answers. So most of you got it right. So as you would have seen in the media that June is already having significant already due. So if you book a new order also in June, then you may not be able to meet the CDD. You can either advance it to May or April, or you can postpone it to July. But June would not be a good idea. So we'll see the winners now. Congrats, Uncle. So Harsh and KVS are runners up. Who is Alessandro? Is that a nickname, or is that the actual name? Who is Alessandro? Okay, let me see the chat. Okay, Abhishek, you are Alessandro. Fine, got it. At least I'm happy that all the questions Harsh and Abhishek are asking they're understanding and they're scoring better now. Okay, I'll close this quiz. So thanks everyone. Now I'll continue the session and you have one more chance to redeem yourselves. The next quiz will be after the current session. So next topic is about how to take a trade-off between price and lead time. For example, we have a Trevisan machine, which is a 5-axis machining center. What it means is that there could be multiple ways. The body will rotate, the table will go front and back, the table will also go left and right, the spindle will go top and bottom, and the spindle can rotate. So like that, there are machines which are having 5 axes of rotation. What it helps us is it helps us in reducing the setup. So in the value stream map, we had seen that how setup time is so much between different activities. So if you go for a 5-axis machine, then the number of setups will reduce. For example, if you are using a conventional drilling machine to put the holes in flange and cover of the body, then you have to first do the machining in one side with the drilling machine. Since the table does not rotate or the spindle does not rotate, you have to actually remove the component. You have to use some crane to rotate it by 180 degree to machine the other flange. But if it was in some horizontal machining center, the table will simply rotate. So once you do the setup, one side machining will happen, the table will rotate, and we'll do the other side machining. The only drawback is that we don't have enough 5-axis machines because they are very, very expensive. Each machine is like 7 crore to 11 crore rupees. So the machine hour rate increases a lot and the price of the valve will increase. So we have a concept called product costing where every valve, how much time it's spent in each machine is noted, the cycle time, and every machine has a machine hour rate machine hour rate associated with it. That machine hour rate comes from the original cost. Suppose it was a 7 crore machine and you're using it for 20 years, then you divide that 7 crore rupees divided by the number of hours in that 20 years, whether it's 2 shift or 3 shift, then you'll get the cost for each hour, and they will also add the labor cost, the tooling cost, the fixturing cost, so the insert consumables cost, electricity cost, everything will be added in that per hour rate, and that will give us the rate. So such complex machine will consume more electricity also. So usually the price is more, but since there are lesser setups, you'll get the component very quickly, and the first time pass will also be good because the more setups you increase, the more there is chance of error or misalignment. So all that is taken care when you do it in a 5-axis machine. Only thing, the price is more. So you have to decide whether you want to go for in-house machining with one machine or there are several machines to do the same process. There will be a separate machine for doing turning, separate machine for doing drilling, separate machine for doing facing, and within each machine you will have multiple setups for each of the side of the valve or each of the side of the component. So all that will add to the lead time when you do all that setup. You saw how much setup time was there. Sometimes the setup time was even more than the cycle time. So going through all that steps will make the lead time more, but those machines are very cheap. So you and in many cases, the conventional machine, like in our Kanchipuram plant and all, it's so old that the depreciation already has been paid off, and essentially that machine is kind of like running for free. So the cost is more in such cases, but the lead time will increase. So it's a trade-off between in-house machining or using conventional machine or going by subcontracting. Even if you go for subcontracting, it can be both cases. Some vendor may have a 5-axis machine, but most vendors will not be able to afford such a machine. So they'll have a series of machines. So each of the machines, even if you go with CNC machine, it could be only 20 lakhs to 40 lakhs, but it will do only one process at a time. It won't be able to do all the processes like how our 5-axis machine is doing. Then other ways of checking at price versus lead time could be that it could be investment casting or sand casting. The investment casting is so good that even the holes will be formed already in the casting. So you don't need to spend additional time on drilling and all that. But the cost is more, but the lead time will reduce. Another example is forging and casting. So forging is more superior, so there will be less of a quality defect and all that happening. So that will increase the first pass yield and all that. But again, it is more expensive. So all these parameters you have to take into account. So if a customer tells that I want a valve as soon as possible, whatever the case, then you can take a call of going with all the premium items and increasing the cost, but meeting his urgent requirement. Anyone has any question here? Lakshmana has told that return on investment, that's right. That will help us decide whether to go for a new machine or go with subcontracting processes. So this particular item have come on the various parts of lean manufacturing. Yesterday, Mr. Tangapandi, he covered it very nicely in the book review by Jeffrey Liker. So if anybody want to know more about this, then you can see the recording of yesterday's book review, what Mr. Tangapandi did. But what we'll cover in today's presentation is how it has been applied in the valve industry. So three main things here are just-in-time, one-piece flow, and Kanban. Just-in-time, basically the raw material should come exactly when we are about to start production. It should not come 1 month in advance and stay in our plant as inventory. One-piece flow, as you saw, we saw that when there is inventory between stations, it increases the lead time like anything. So if you ensure that only one valve is flowing through the process line at a given time, then there will be no inventory in between, and that will drastically reduce the lead time. The third one is Kanban. So we saw that pull system is required so that inventory does not get accumulated. So Kanban is one tool where the guy who is in the next station tells the previous station that right now I don't have anything to process, so please give me some item, and he'll pull the component from the previous station. So there is this is a particular use case. For example, in the B building at SVG, around 4 to 5 years back, we used to have 2-inch to 32-inch, all the valves made in the same line. So from Toyota production system point of view, this is very nice, because that's what TPS tells us, to have everything in one line, and every process will be just like 10 to 20 seconds. And because everything is one line, you don't need so many assembly lines, and that's the philosophy, that it will reduce cost and so on. But we notice some drawbacks in our industry, because when both 2-inch and 32-inch go through the same line, you'll notice that we have very big furnace and huge phosphating tanks in B building. So the same 2-inch valve will be dipped in that huge tank, and then a 32-inch will also be dipped in that same tank. You can imagine such a big tank being used for covering the surface area of a small 2-inch valve, and the chemicals will be not so well utilized. Same way, the furnace is very big, and to do the heat treatment of a small 2-inch valve, the whole furnace area has to be heated up. So it was very inefficient. The second issue was because the 32-inch occupies more space, the assembly area is very big, and that same 2-inch valve has to travel that whole 32-inch assembly area to go to the next stage of testing. So it was covering more distance. The third issue was the 2-inch will have very less takt time or cycle time, and 32-inch will have more cycle time. So that 32-inch will be, when the 32-inch assembly is going on, it will go on for like 3 hours or 4 hours, and that 2-inch will have to wait for that full 3 to 4 hours until it can be processed. Since the cycle time was varying so much, it was causing a lot of issues. Here's when we went for one of the concepts called Seru manufacturing. So Seru manufacturing, it started in the electronics industry in Japan in 1990s. So lean manufacturing actually started in Japan in 1930s, 1940s with Toyota. And what happened was, by 1990, industries like electronics industry, they noticed that the lean system was not so efficient for them. And they started developing this new concept called Seru manufacturing. So it's a concept where they have cellular manufacturing. So instead of having a big common line, they have multiple cells, and each cell they'll do some kind of a range, and they will become specialized in doing that particular range, and they'll become very fast in doing. So in the previous case, the 32-inch, the way you handle the material is different, and 2-inch, the way you handle the material is different, and the guy is not expert in either. But in this cellular manufacturing, the guys who are doing 2-inch became expert in manufacturing the 2-inch quickly, and the guys who did 32-inch became well versed in handling the 32-inch. Then another thing is this serum manufacturing is more suited to our kind of industry where the cost of the product is high and the production is not mass production. If you do like 10,000 or 20,000 components in a month or something, that would be mass production. But we do, in a given line, we do only around 500 to 1,000 wells. So it's a medium volume production. And for this kind of components, we found that serum manufacturing was good. So what we did was we carved out each of the ranges separately. I'll show one example. So this is like the B building, what we have, and it has 4 bays, bay 1, bay 2, bay 3, and bay 4. So before all the valves were traveling in bay 1 to 2, it used to take a big U-turn. So there would be like welding process here, phosphating process here, machining, assembly, and testing. So every valve used to travel 354 meters. Then we separated 2 to 4 inch separately, and in this small confined area, we made a small 2 to 4 inch layout. Then what happened was the 2 to 4 inch was traveling only 55 meters, and the other valves were traveling 354 meters. So the time taken for processing the 2 to 4 inch valve reduced drastically. This is how initially they simply segregated the area alone, but the equipment was same. They just moved the test stand from the top area, from this area to 55 meter area, but still the flow was zigzag and capacity of the valves was only around 200 per month. Then we redesigned the layout, and we got dedicated small furnace, small washing machine, a conveyor assembly which is based on takt time, and then this U-shaped layout was formed, and it was we noticed that the capacity of the valves had increased dramatically. So all the dedicated machines, so before there was a very big furnace, now there is a smaller 2-ton furnace for the smaller components, and all the machineries were customized for that 2 to 4 inch layout. Then we have heard so much about one piece flow, but we never see how it is practically implemented. So this is another good use case where you can see how the one piece flow was implemented. So this is a trolley where before 10 valves worth of components were put. You can see that there are 10 stems below. So the 10 valves worth of components were put in a single trolley. And since there are 10 valves worth of components, it will go to one station. The person will do part of the process, and only after all the 10 valves are assembled by him, the next process, it will go for the next process of testing. So the 10 valves will get accumulated, and then it will go to the next process. Then what we did was we redesigned the kit trolley so that it can hold components only for one valve. So you can see in the previous one, they could put as many stems as possible, but here there is a slot for putting only one stem. Similarly, it cannot hold too many nuts and bolts and all that. Usually they'll take 10 valves of the same type into the trolley. So in this, if they take a small 2-inch 150 class or something, they have slots only for assembling one valve for that 2-inch. So they are forced to take another trolley for the next valve. So this way, it was possible to drive one-piece flow by redesigning the kit trolley. Another thing we had discussed was a single-minute exchange of dies. So initially, to implement that, they put hydraulic stations where initially it was a manual screw type arrangement. So you had to rotate the screw, and the V block on both sides will come closer, and the body will be held in place. Then slowly we implemented that hydraulic arrangement everywhere. So it was put not only for the V block, but it was also put for, you can see this white color item, that's the V block. And here there are various V block, various height. Then you can see there is a hydraulic arrangement here. So if there is a valve which is having more height, then the height will be reduced. if the component is not as tall, then the again the hydraulic fixture will be operated and it will be lifted up so that the person need not bend and do the work. And this assembly station was based on takt time. So as per takt time, 15 minutes, every 15 minutes a valve should come out. So but the cycle time was 60 minutes. So 4 stations were put up so that 25% of the assembly was done in each station, and every 15 minutes a valve was coming out of the line. Now, this is one of the last things we'll cover today. So this is the pull-based system where what happens is when a given customer delivery date is there, we reverse schedule for not, we saw how the pull system worked between different stations. But in this case, we'll see how the pull system works between overall chain. So if the CDD is on a particular date, then 1 month before that, the full kit should be available. And for the full kit to be available, either the BOF should come just in time at that particular time, since it does not require any machining or something. But in case of the casting, they should come 2 months in advance from this CDD, so that in the 1 month you can do, because there will already be a significant queue of items, and to machine the item on time and receive it along with the BOF, then 2 months before the CDD, the casting should be received so that it can be sent for subcontracting machining or in-house machining. And 3 months before, the casting process should have started so that by the 2 months before CDD, the casting is ready and available for the machining process. So this is the pull-based system for reverse scheduling from CDD till the casting receipt. And based on this CDD, they can make the 3-month production plan, which right now our planning team is circulating. So anybody has any questions? Okay, if there are no questions, then we'll go back to the quiz again. So guys, please go to kahoot.it. So you have the pin again. I'll wait for just another minute. Anyone else is joining, they can please join. This time the questions are very easier and it will be similar to what we already saw. So this time you'll have more time also. It won't be 10 seconds, it'll be 20 seconds. So you can be more relaxed and easy and answer your questions more easily. All right, I'm about to start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. Wow, most of you got it right. That's nice. Again, most of you got it right. So this we had already covered in the initial stage that throughput comprises of processing time, inspection time, move time, and queue time. I think again, most of you got right. So some of you have selected only A, but as you recall, the public holidays also reduces the capacity for that. Now double points. So if even if you have been last so far, you can become first if you answer this right. So most of you got it right. That's nice. Okay, again, Alessandro is coming first. Okay, this is very surprising. Uh, as I had shown you in the previous chart also, the takt time line was there, and we saw that some cycle time was more than that takt time line. So our aim was to reduce the cycle time below the takt time for all processes. So that should be the objective. So answer was false. Congrats to the winners. We also have Lakshmana and Aditya as backup runners up. So we are at the end of the session. So if anyone has any questions now, anything related to operations, manufacturing, you can ask me now. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, I see one question. Restocking and for the kit trolley for each valve again is again a non-value added time. So actually it is not. What happens is this trolley also serves as Kanban. So when the empty trolley goes back to the store, there are 4 trolleys here and in the assembly line, and there are additional 2 trolleys. So those additional 2 trolleys, when they go back to stores, it becomes like a Kanban to them to refill the trolley. They'll refill the trolley, and by the time the first trolley is empty, the next trolley will come on time. So before, the stores guy was taking the same time to fill one big trolley for 10 valves. Now he's filling each trolley one at a time. He probably has a kit inside the stores already segregated for the various valves as per schedule. Only thing is he'll fill the trolley so that at a given time only one trolley worth of material goes to the line, and that ensures that there is only one particular valve, one particular trolley going to the shop floor. So that ensures single piece flow. Any other question, anyone? Okay, if that's all, then thank you everyone. Thanks for joining. Thanks for your time. Tomorrow, I think Praveen sir and Puvendra sir are going to cover total production TPM concepts. So I think in that you'll get to know further concepts related to this in much more detail, because they're going to cover 2 sessions for the next 2 days, and then they're going to have another two sessions later on. So stay tuned for that total productive maintenance program. And that's all from my side. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you, Yasir.
Thank you, sir.